Warning! The following video contains graphic clown imagery. If you're afraid to see a clown, close your eyes and watch anyways. Shout out to Mega G-Bomb and Seek Said So! Their links are in the description box down below. Enjoy the video.
Pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum, pasito tum tum.
Hello, this is Chef Willy. Welcome to a classic modern reviews. It. What do they have in common? Their pronouns. I mean, you're afraid of a pronoun. It's just a pronoun. But in a serious note, they are similar by the following question I would like to ask. Clowns. Why are we afraid of them? I ask this because I was never afraid of clowns as a kid. I knew and understood what they were. A guy in a face paint that acts silly to entertain children. I saw no problem with that. But then you have this other group of children that no matter what, they couldn't help but to wet their pants out of fear of their jokes. What was supposed to be colorful, friendly, and fun turned into the nightmare that haunted everyone of every age. So let's talk about Stephen King's It. If the 1990 miniseries opened up to the fear of clowns, years later it would kill the clown business in the new It remake. This would of course raise a new fear over clowns, being the biggest box office horror hit of all time since The Exorcist. But the extent is so ridiculous to how a recent study has shown that people are more afraid of clowns than terrorism or global warming. But why? What is so scary about them? Is it the makeup? Is it something that we don't know about them? How is it that people feel disdain to someone that looks like this? Booga 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 booga! By the way, you like the face paint? I thought it would be the only time I ever used it as I talk about the movies and understand what's so scary about clowns. First of all, you gotta look into who were the clowns' intended audience in those days. Through history, clowns have evolved through the test of time, and as they evolved, their audience has likewise changed. In ancient times, they were entertainers to the pharaohs. In Rome, clowns would go to funerals to mock the dead bodies. Later, jesters became political figures expressing their views about the king. Then they went back being entertainers, from theaters to more circus family-oriented. Now they become monsters in the eyes of everyone, including kids. So clowns have evolved from being adult-oriented to being sold as a kids-friendly product. But their little stories will not show a clean reputation of them, so this will not suit well with kids as it invoked a psychological fear over clowns known as coulrophobia, even though these cases of phobia don't happen very often. Most notable reason I often come across with, but still important to mention, the uncanny valley. This is a hypothesis where we feel disdain or repulsion to whatever looks like a human, but it's not quite human, such as human-looking AIs, dolls, CGI humans, or in this case, clowns. Likewise, their makeup can also be a link of causing psychological fear. In the book Bad Clowns, Benjamin Radford states that there is something inherently menacing about a masked stranger. Clown makeup is another form of mask. A white grin in their face can build an uncertainty of what are they truly thinking. Are they bad people? Do they have bad intentions? And the more unpredictable it is on what they're thinking, the more untrustworthy they are in the eyes of the people. And often clown stories don't always show a positive side of them. Most common one is about Joseph Grimaldi. He was known to be the originator of modern clowns, but ended up being crippled for his stunts and ended up being depressed. Later his son would take the mantle of a clown, but had a reputation of being a drunkard and would die at a young age. Charles Dickens would publish his father's memoirs and was credited for inventing the scary clown. Later in the 70s, it would get much more disturbing in the case of John Wayne Gacy, a mass murderer who dressed up as a clown to lure his victims and killed them. And the most recent story, the killer clown panic during all month of October in 2016. So behind these funny looking people, their most noticeable stories have been about drunkenness, depression, murder, and chaos. But Stephen King went to a new level when he placed everything that's evil and scary in the world on a clown. He invoked it as a creature that fed into our deepest, darkest, traumatizing fears and was placed as a challenge to overcome those fears. The reason he goes after Georgie at the opening is because of sensing his fear of the dark. The fear that his victims go through is what triggers him to detect them as an easy prey. Similar, if you placed another character as everything that's evil in the world, you become the most feared entity of all time. In a Q&A related to what inspired Stephen King to write the book, he mentioned how he wanted to write something that had vampires, mummies, and werewolves, with a clown being the main lead monster, because he thought even back then they were scary. Now the new version does however remove itself from the cliché fears of monsters to more realistic ones such as racism, rape, or abuse at home. It wasn't after it that movies and television started to exploit clowns as scary beings, when before movies like Poltergeist and Clowns from Outer Space were the rare occasion.
But the thing I fear more than anything, yes, even more than zombies, fucking clowns.
So with that said, let's look into both It movies to see how much they hold up on that shivering fear. The original It was a two-part miniseries that aired straight to television on the ABC channel. It was about 7 outcast kids who join back together in their adulthood to go after a killer clown that has come back to terrorize the streets of Maine since their infancy, played by Tim Curry. It became such a success that has ever since had a cult following, which brought a new cinematic update to Stephen King's It. Similar premise, only focus on their childhood experience while saving the adult story for the next sequel. I, like many others, saw the movie as a kid, and I was terrified of Pennywise's portrayal as a demon clown. I think kids can oftentimes be scared of something that's supposed to be pure and harmless being corrupted. It can be scary at a young age to see a harmless doll turn into a maniacal serial killer. Or it can be disturbing to see young innocent children act like bloodthirsty psychopaths. In this case, it was scary for me to see someone that was supposed to be funny and silly and yet be this unstoppable monster that you couldn't reason with. But that doesn't mean the original was a perfect film, and neither is the new remake. So let's start by taking a look into the kids. The cast in both films are genuinely great. They're fun and interesting. In the original, they were better actors than the adults. Given the dialogue they had to read from, they managed to pull it off much better. But we don't get to know them enough as kids or their point of view about their fears since it's told from flashbacks, and when we see them as adults, they're too silly and over the top to take them seriously.
Billy boy! Wheezy, how's your sex life? What's your sex life?
In the new one, they have more screen time to know their personalities and what they're afraid of. As they get deeper into the danger, you see their bond become much loyal and profound towards each other, which makes you grow some sort of connection with them. But, since it takes place in the 80s, it has most of the cliché tropes every kid gang had in the 80s. The leader, the goofball, the nerd, the loudmouth, the girl, the fat one, you get them all here. Oftentimes, the clichés don't always do well service. There's a moment when they all break up, when it's no shock, they're all coming back together again. There's an added first love kiss that breaks spells in the end, which even if you haven't read the book, you can easily guess that was not in there. One of the 80s tropes that the new one does better is the bullies. In the original, they were just generic brats that went too far for no reason. In the new version, there's more background to their violent nature, often involves stress and abuse at home that turns into a psychotic breakdown. Now, just a quick thought. I found interesting how the book describes Pennywise as a combination of Bustle the Clown and Clarabelle the Clown. While both individual versions do resemble some similarities to their descriptions, I thought it would be an interesting fact to point out. Oftentimes, Tim Curry is considered to be the defining Pennywise, and he could be. Despite it being a movie going straight to cable, he did the best he could to bring so much personality into it. He could be loud and funny and spewed out one-liners.
Beep, Richie. Do you have Prince Albert in a can?
Come on, bucko. Kiss me, fat boy.
Well, you better let the poor guy out.
But when he gets serious, he was terrifying for me as a kid. Just to hear him spell out his intentions to the kids with no one-liners, just plain and simple. I want to kill you. That gave me a hard time not to think about it in my sleep when I was younger.
I'll kill you all. I'll drive you crazy and I'll kill you all.
In the new one, he's more settled and quiet. What they did better, however, is they played more to his demon persona. In the original, we don't know what Pennywise is. They never say if he's a ghost or an alien or clarify why he's going after the kids. In the new one, they still keep it as a mystery, but they let us know that it's been around for some time, and will probably expand more to his story in the next sequel. They embody Pennywise as a spiritual being that inspires evil deeds. Whenever there is mischief approaching, it lets us know that his presence is there, manipulating the situation, in one form or the other, whether you notice him or you don't. In this case, the balloons actually work more effectively on building up suspense than the original did. But while their performances are good and distinguishable, they also have their disadvantages. The original Pennywise can be too hilarious to be scared of. And the new Pennywise can look too scary to fall in his traps. The idea is to lure kids as if it were a pedophile. In the book, Pennywise is described as an everyday looking clown as a form of deception. Until when he attacks, that's when he reveals his true monstrosity. So when I look at this scene, no kid in their right mind would look at that face and say, huh, maybe he is not so bad. I think what will come across their mind is, ah, ah, ah! For a bigger budgeted movie, the special effects look too phony and it took me out of the suspense every time. Most of the effects in the original don't hold up as well, but even with their low budget, the simple effects do work, however, enough to scare the kids. But as much as they have their good moments, neither one has the it value that makes them the perfect it. I've stated before how the original used to scare me when I was younger. Now that I'm older, the film and the scares don't hold up as good. It's not until I saw other people's point of view about the movie that I realized how goofy and unintentionally hilarious this was. Even though I can say the new version is better than the original, the problem with it is, it was not as scary. It was an 80s come of age mixed with horror and plenty of comedy. A lot of comedy. I was surprised to see how much comedy this had and how misleading the advertisements were for this to be the scariest movie of all time. And I fell into the hype, and I was kinda disappointed to see the theater laughing when the kids are shouting profanities during a scene that's supposed to be scary. Now it doesn't mean I didn't have fun with it. I know I couldn't hold my laugh after seeing this. Fuck you, bro! But during its half runtime, I was thinking to myself, this is the good movie King wasn't prepared for? Now reading this quote, I thought good meant scary, but the more I thought about it, I do remember feeling invested and sometimes emotional, and I do remember some scary moments as well. From a genre that we think it's nothing but scares and no human investment, I remember caring about the characters and their fears and what they went through. I remember the suspense building up at the opening with Georgie, and I do remember it took more chances on being edgier, with the kids saying profanities, pedophilia, watching a child's arm being ripped apart. Something of that edginess the original was missing. While I would have preferred it had been more scary, I saw how this could be frightening in a child's point of view. Just like my new generation was afraid of the original Pennywise, now we poke fun of its corny goofiness. This will probably terrify the younger audience and then grow up to see the goofy side of it. It's the boogeyman for kids. And I also like the idea of a monster that uses our fears against us. It gives it a psychological spin and thought into our own personal fears. The sequel might be hard to pull off, given that it has to prove that part 2 with the adults doesn't suck. But despite how over supernatural it gets, if it works and keeps our investment with the characters, I have a strange sense that this could potentially be a classic for horror sequels. I might be overhyping it and I could be wrong. For now, this is gonna be the Stand By Me for younger audiences, their Goonies, the original Pennywise that scared them. But I think many are going to remember more the original for Tim Curry's performance and for introducing us to the fear of clowns. I do, however, feel bad for the good clowns that try to bring some fun and joy, but I don't think they're gonna go away anytime soon. As long as they evolve through the years, we're gonna continue seeing them either as entertainers or as monsters. If you're afraid of clowns, I would be lying if I said I get you. But if you're one of those that claims to be afraid of them just because it's popular to be afraid of them, it's just makeup. Get over it.
Now that I got that out of the way, let's get into my everyday looking mask. So what do you thought about these two movies? Were they scary? Were they not scary for you? What's your criteria over them? You can leave your comments on the description box down below. And if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe for more content. Well guys, tune in next time because when I get back, I'll be breaking my rule of just comparing a classic and modern one to just being recent as I take on the modern Disney version of Beauty and the Beast and the modern French version of La Belle et la Bête. So for now, that's it for today. Ciao!
Pasito tum tum, pasito tum